got the guilty verdict now in the trial of Ashley Benefield, but it's on lesser charges. It's not the full second-degree murder. It's manslaughter, which carries up to 30 years sentence. I believe minimum 11 or 11 and a half, something like that. And, of course, when you get in the if there's time served or good behavior and stuff, it might be like 80%. Who knows? But sentencing is still coming up. But she has been found guilty of manslaughter. Benefield was originally charged with second-degree murder, but, of course, was convicted of the lesser crime. The judgment remanded her to the custody of the Manatee County Sheriff's Office, and they revoked her $100,000 bond. The case, of course, dubbed the Black Swan Murder Trial, based on the 2010 film Black Swan, starring Natalie Portman as a ballerina in the midst of a psychological unraveling. Benefield was accused of fatally shooting her husband, 58-year-old Doug Benefield, in her mother's Lakewood Ranch home in September of 2020. Prosecutors said that Ashley killed her estranged husband because she wanted sole custody of their young daughter, didn't want him in their lives anymore. Let's take a listen to the closing arguments in this case from the prosecution, arguing specifically that point.
This defendant used domestic violence and allegations of it to make progress on her goal. And her goal was she wanted sole custody of that child at all costs. After knowing each other 13 days and a 30-year age difference, they married each other. According to the defendant's testimony, very shortly after, there starts controlling behaviors and name-calling. Within days of these anger outbursts in South Carolina, there's a lavish wedding reception where everyone seems to be happy. And then within about 3 months after that, the defendant gets pregnant. In the midst of all of this, she gets pregnant. The very next month, she moves to her mother's house in Florida because she's so sick and needs someone to take care of her. That is the last moment that this defendant ever lived in the same house with Doug Benefield. She filed for a South Carolina injunction while she's in Florida. She doesn't even live in South Carolina. But she starts a series of complaints in Florida. She starts saying he violated the South Carolina injunction, and she claims he's poisoning me. He's poisoning me and my unborn child. When she goes early to give birth, she doesn't tell Doug. She doesn't tell him once the baby's born. For weeks, he didn't know this child was born. Then she does not put his name on the birth certificate. The conversations that she had with Detective Gillum are the entire crux of this case. It is her motive, it is her plan, it is what she did everything for. He said her true motives were to use the criminal system to affect her family court case. And now we're in a stage where we're acting like we're going to get back together. Because she knew the court system was not working, and she was afraid that if she didn't buddy up to him, he was going to get this child away from her. So it begins the charade of her telling him, we're going to get back together, we're going to be a family. She played on Doug Benefield's wishes. He wanted more than anything to have a family, his family together, to have his wife that he loved and this child all together. Doug finds out she's dating someone else. He files for divorce. And a series of complaints start against Doug Benefield for now abusing the child. So they go to this evaluation with Dr. Broder, and this deception on the part of Ashley Benefield continues. She does the same thing. We're going to reconcile, we're going to get back together, and then when she's not with him, she's saying that that's not true. And she says to him, I'll take matters into my own hands. And that was 7 days, up to 17 days before, depending on about what time it was, he gets murdered. They did not live together for 3 years before the homicide. And if there was violence towards Ashley Benefield in South Carolina, that was 3 years before. And they hadn't lived together since. And is that something that justified her being in such fear of Doug Benefield that it was necessary to shoot and kill him?
That was the argument by the prosecution, really outlining a lot of what she did leading up to the shooting. But the defense has their own arguments as well. I do not think Doug is an angel by any stretch of the imagination. I think he was a pretty shitty human being as well. Not to, talk ill of the dead, but from what we know, the facts point that way. The allegations of mental abuse and physical abuse to his ex-wife, he doesn't seem to be the most well-balanced human being. Thoughts?
My prevailing thought during this whole thing, especially hearing the verdict, is we don't know what went on in this relationship. And we have an idea. And maybe she's, like you've said, she's a narcissist. They were both screwed up. This was a bad relationship. Now one person is dead. I go back to something that my husband says. He doesn't practice criminal law, but he is in the law field. He said to me once, and it stuck with me, like, he said, I'd rather have an innocent person free than a guilty person incarcerated. I'm sorry, an innocent person incarcerated and a guilty person on the outside. Does that make sense? Like, I would rather have somebody who is guilty and should be in jail, but didn't end up in jail than somebody who's innocent ending up in jail. And sure. I'm not saying that she shouldn't have some punishment, but what if she really was abused? What kind of precedent are we setting now for abused women to defend themselves? Maybe this went too far. He died. Maybe it wasn't as severe as what she thought it was. But are we going to jail women who've been abused and strike out? I don't know. I just feel icky about this. And I guess if she's guilty and needs punishment, 30 years seems like a lot to me. Oh my God. I don't know.
What if the tables were turned?
I know. And, but I'm just so torn. Like, what if there are women out there saying, I've been abused. It's not horrible, but I'm being abused.
Yeah. Well, since
what if one day I feel threatened that he's really going to do something to me?
Let's take the physicality out of this, because she says there was no physical abuse. Now, certainly he can be more intimidating. I can understand that. Mm-hmm. But I'm just playing devil's advocate here. What if it was reversed? What if it was Doug Benefield that was on the stand saying, look, she's mentally abused me for all these years, and it was the exact opposite. And I had to do this. She didn't even really argue why she ran away and didn't tell him like she was having the kid or anything like that. But what if it's argued, like, hey, look, she seems unstable. I was afraid of her having the kid. That's why I did this or that. And then whatever it may be that it ended up in death. Would it be the same conversation? And I know men and women are different, and there's certainly ways to intimidate one over the other. But where a lot of this is the crux is on mental abuse.
Right.
And it can happen both ways.
And it does. It does happen both ways.
And I feel like, honestly, in this case, we have two people who, to a certain extent, were mentally abusing one another. You have one who is an intimidator and one who was a manipulator. And the two want to always be right. And the two always want to be in control individually. And that does not work when you have that kind of a dynamic. And that's where I think we have in this case, because it's to me, this is not about not believing women who have been abused at all. This is about just looking at the case in itself and taking a look at, well, yeah, there's a lot of evidence here that, things were a little bit, a lot of impulsive, bad decisions being made. There was certainly manipulation that went on. And then, the other side where it's control, the man who talks about wanting to literally destroy these men who were on a cruise she was on with her mom because they were fucking talking in the background. I mean, very unhinged people, not healthy people in any stretch of the imagination. And we're going to hear some of that defense argument here in just a second. Prosecutors said that Ashley killed her estranged husband because she wanted that sole custody of the kid, and didn't want to have, basically to have anything to deal with him. The case is about a woman who very early on in her pregnancy decided she wanted to be a single mother. Assistant State Attorney Suzanne O'Donnell told the jury in her opening statement, according to the Post and Courier, she did not want the father of this child to have any visitation, and she would stop at nothing to obtain that goal. Now, if you're doing that for the well-being of the child because you're afraid of what that person could do or has done or has, real legitimate serious potential to do, I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But is it as dire as she thinks it is? I don't know. I mean, again, it may have been. It very well may have been. But there are proper channels to do these things through, and they do fail you. And maybe she was failed by the system so many times, and that's why she felt like she had no other choice in the world but to do what she did.
Well, and that's the thing. She had made a lot of complaints. Do we know if any of those were substantiated? No, we really don't.
Yeah, we do. They were dismissed. They were denied.
They were denied. But what if in her mind, she was really in need of help and they kept saying, we don't see enough evidence. We don't see this. We don't see that.
Well, I guess the question is, was it in her mind or was it real?
And that's what we're never going to know. We don't know the inner workings of this relationship, truly. So, are we dealing with somebody who is mentally ill and thought she was being abused? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Here's what her defense argued in closing arguments.
Doug Benefield shoots a gun into the ceiling of their kitchen to intimidate Ashley to stop speaking, throwing a loaded gun at Ashley Benefield, threatening suicide, punching the dog so hard that he knocked the dog unconscious, threw the cat down the stairs.
Okay, I want to just stop on some of those, though. That's what she's saying he did.
Do we have a veterinarian report of any sort?
No, we don't.
Okay.
And to me, if you're a manipulator, let's throw that shit in there. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't have done it. I just don't know. But there's so many things we don't know because she's been caught in lies here, too. She, in the past, has said that there was physical abuse. Then on the stand the other day, she said there was no physical abuse. So it's not like it's not like it's beyond her purview to make shit up.
If now that I said, is there a veterinarian's report coming from the veterinary field? If we suspect animal abuse, we need to turn that in and talk about, you don't want to poke the bear. If you've got an abusive person at home, you take in an animal who was thrown down the stairs, that's going to raise suspicion that there's a problem in the house. That's going to bring the police around. Yeah. One of the things that I remember from childhood was because I had an incredibly abusive father who was mentally horribly abusive to our entire family. We didn't talk about that out in public. Nobody in the small town that we lived in knew that my dad was a fucking psychotic, raging monster.
Sure.
Nobody knew that. I made sure people knew after he died. Like, this is who this guy was. Yeah. I made no secret about it. Everybody needed to know. But while he was alive, it was forbidden to ever talk about anything that could make him look bad. Ever. Yeah. Because that's how those people work.
Yeah. I agree. And I, in no way am I denying that this shit happens. It does. I've been on the being abused end of it as the victim. So I know it happens, and it certainly happens on both ends. But people also do adopt the abused narrative, sometimes for their own advantage and for their own, and that does happen. People do lie. Men are capable of lying. Women are capable of lying. Everyone is capable of lying for their own basic, for their advantage, their own self-interest. But it's a question of, why are you lying? Sometimes it is to hide the abuser so the world doesn't see it because that's a survival instinct. Some people make up the stories because it's just what they want and they want to be in control. And Who fucking cares what happens to that person? They're not in my life anymore. I'll say whatever I need to keep them away from me just because I don't want them anymore. I'll destroy their life. I'll say the worst fucking things in the world about them.
Yeah.
And that happens. And it's very hard to know the difference. And this is a case that I think it's a gray area. I think it all falls in the middle. I think there's a mix of both going on. I do think she was abused. I think she was mentally abused without a doubt. But I do think that there has been manipulation on both ends of this. I don't think either of them are angels by any means. Let's listen to more of the closing.
Put a tracker on her car. The neighbor catches him in the yard at night, cursing, yelling, screaming, belittling. Text messages, I'm in a murderous mood. I want to rid the earth of them. Take them out. That was about two guys having a conversation while Ashley was on a cruise. Doug Benefield was so demented that just hearing in the background two men speaking while Ashley was on a cruise makes him say he wants to take them out, rid the earth of them. That puts him in a murderous mood. How about driving from South Carolina to Florida so that you could follow Ashley in the car? I mean, if that's not determination, what is? If that's not fixation, what is? If that's not obsession, what is?
I want to pause there for a second, though, too.
Okay.
She did not tell him that she had given birth to his child. There was no court that said that he cannot be part of this child's life.
Yeah, she took it upon herself to make that decision for him.
She took it upon herself to make that decision for him and just kind of disappeared, went hiding. You know what? If I was with somebody who was kind of unstable and they did that, I would be looking for her too, for the concern of my child. Now, the assumption in those statements is that he was going after Ashley. Was he, or was he more trying to get close to his daughter to figure out what the hell's going on here, especially when it eventually comes back around to, oh, yes, let's get back together and all of that. There's just so many questions here.
Yeah.
Let's continue on.
And most chilling, I thought, was Mr. Vincicaro, the realtor, who, while the injunction is in effect from South Carolina, look at the email between Doug Benefield and Vince Vincicaro. I asked him, did you have any dealings with Douglas Benefield? Yes, I did. What was it? He was a customer looking to buy a home. Where was that home? It was the house immediately behind Ashley Benefield's house. This is sick, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, very controlling, very, again, I think Doug's a shitty human being as well. I think he was mentally abusive. I think there's a lot that was not good there at all. He was an intimidator. She was a manipulator. And this is what we ended up with. Is this more of a lesson of the system needs to take a lot closer look at these cases and not just brush it off in such a quick fashion? I don't know how the system could even accommodate that.
Right.
But it seems that we look back at the system many times and go, well, why wasn't this litigated? It was attempted to be. And the court did do its job. I mean, the court came up with decisions. The court said, we don't believe your accusations against him. There isn't really any proof to it. There's some different ones here. I'm wondering why some of these things were never actually brought into court in the family law area, especially the stuff from the ex-wife.
That was some important information because it showed a pattern.
Yeah.
It showed the way he interacted with people that were intimately in his circle.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to show that as, like I said, a pattern that, this wasn't just out of the blue. This guy has kind of pulled this shit for a while, and we've got another person who who can attest to it. So why wasn't that brought up?
But then the way she acted towards the officer in court as well, screaming, you're going to arrest him in front of me right now, like going into hysterics. That showed a very unstable person too.
Could that have been from fear?
Could it have? I mean, yeah, I guess, sure. It certainly could have been from fear. It could also have been, I mean, the way that the officer had put it was like she could turn it on and turn it off pretty fucking quick.
I guess my concern is I just hope that there aren't women out there watching this, seeing this go down, and they're truly in a situation that everything on the outside looks great. But when that door shuts at night, things are not good and they're dangerous. And one day they're going to need law enforcement and they're not going to be believed. And that scares me. And I don't have an answer. Like, I'm sure people are out there going, well, what should they have done?
Get the fuck out. That's the only thing you can do. I mean,
what if you can't?
You need to find a way. I've been there on the other end of the one being abused, and I get it. You feel like you are trapped. And I'm not a woman, but look, again, this shit does happen to men too.
Yeah.
And you sit there for a long time feeling like you can't. Like you're gonna sit there and be there for the kids because it's better that you're there. And then they're not just alone with someone that you don't think is stable. And I get it. You sit there. I fucking sat there forever in that until it got to the point where literally our lives were in danger. Similar to this.
Yeah.
Same shit. But luckily bullets didn't get fired and I wasn't holding a gun. But the thing is, if you're already in that situation, you need to recognize it and realize it will not get better. I think that's the biggest thing, is somehow thinking, well, with some therapy or with some this or with some that, it'll get better. Look, there are certain things that can be helped with therapy. There certainly are. Personality disorders are not one of them most of the time. And there's a difference between mental illness and personality disorder. Huge difference. And if you can understand what is going on, why it's going on, if this is something ingrained into someone like a personality disorder or a mental illness that comes on in life, whether for whatever reason, those sort of things can come and they can go. Sometimes they can't, though, either. But you have to understand what you're dealing with and deal with reality on reality's terms and understand that, look, as much as you'd love this person to be the person you want them to be, they're never going to be. Show me one reformed narcissist that truly has the narcissistic personality disorder. Show me one that's ever come around going, yeah, I was really like this. And then I had a bright idea one day to go, I'm going to stop being like this. We can all go beyond like young narcissistic, tendencies. We all have them. But it's a level of maturity where you can look back going, yeah, I was pretty narcissistic back then. But when you have a disorder and it's the way it is, it's like, you're never going to fucking change that in the other person. So would you like to continue living in this hell or what? It's up to you. But I don't ever like getting stuck on this, there's nothing I can do attitude. There is. There's always something you can do. There always is. Or you can end up becoming murdered or dead or a victim. But it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to say those things are simple to do by any means. They're not. And it can be scary. And you may put yourself at some risk by trying to move out of it. But one is pretty much guaranteed to end in the train wreck and the fucking cars blowing up and everything and everyone dying. And the other one is an escape route. And like, if I go off this way right now and I can get out and we can be like, I can get away from this fucking train that's about to go off the cliff.
Yeah, I get it.
But not easy. I'm not saying it's easy by any means.
No, it's not. It's not easy. And it's terrifying to be in that situation. It's life-changing. And sometimes it doesn't end right. It doesn't end well.
No, and it can end horribly too when you try to get out of it too. Again, it's one of those things. The more people that are aware of what's going on, the more support you can have on your side. If you're in that sort of a situation, likely the better off you will be. The more that a hellish world like that stays behind closed doors and the only people that know about it are you and the abuser, the worse off it will be.
Yep, very well put.
But I believe there's always a way to change whatever you're in. Never going to be easy, though, especially in horrible situations like this. The actual sentencing has not yet has a date set for it, but of course, we'll let you know what that is when they have it.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
Until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.